So what's interesting about digital transformation, especially in the current scenario, is most of the innovation that we're seeing in IT these days is happening in the open source arena. Every new startup, every new company that is developing a new idea is taking advantage of open source technology to realize that, and also using the open source community to build it. Mm-hmm. And we're even finding that large established companies, I mean, for example, Microsoft, are investing more into open source and opening their own previously proprietary world into that open source community. So all of the technologies that people are looking at, machine learning, autonomous vehicles, autonomous systems, 3D printing, blockchain, this is all enabled by open source technologies and the open source community. The interesting thing about open source is that it allows you to collaborate outside of your own organization. Years ago, I worked for a company called Sun Microsystems. One of the founders, Bill Joy, had a quote which was, at any one time, most of the smart people in the world do not work in your company. So open source lets you take advantage of that whole community of people. Open source contributions come not only from one organization, one company, but from research organizations, from companies collaborating with each other, from end users, even from individuals who are interested in a particular topic. So you have a much larger amount of brain power that you can call upon to solve the problems that people are trying to solve in that field. So open source gives you access to a wide community, and it helps you not only solve the problems, but it also helps to test whether your solutions are valid or not. If you're in a group of your peers in an organization, in an industry, you can bounce ideas off each other and work out that if we've got a choice of 3 ways of solving a problem, maybe the first way is the better way rather than the second or the third. And that's why we're really interested in joining open source communities that have a wide spectrum of involvement of organizations that are involved. And when Suse looks for open source products to bring to market as enterprise products, we look for projects that have deep involvement from a wide spectrum, rather than trying to go at ourselves, go alone, and just do some work and then share the source code. That's not open source. That's just making your source code available. Really, being open source is being part of an open community that is collaborating together. I think. So we were just at a summit, at a conference this morning, where the topic of security and open source and how does that work together was raised, and I think there is a mistaken thought that perhaps if the source code is open and available, that is somehow less secure, and that's really not the case. There's an expression that there is no security in obscurity. That means if you hide something, it's not going to make it more secure. In fact, there's another expression that the best disinfectant is sunlight. So in other words, if you show the problems, if you show the code available, you have more people looking at it. The other point is from a security point of view, especially security, intrinsic security of open source, is that I can tell you that our engineers in our organization, and I'm sure other organizations, they all have their own personal bests that they're trying to achieve. Just like in a cricket team, you're trying to win the game, but there's also the personal best of the best batsman score or the best bowling score or whatever. These programmers are also trying to show their personal best as well. So they know when they're contributing code to an open source project, they want it to be the best thing that they can show to other people, because they know that their peers are also looking at their code. And I can guarantee you that the programmers are looking at each other's code saying, hey, you didn't do that right, or this could be better, or whatever, all the time. So this adds to the quality of the code that people are producing, and also to the security of code that they're producing as well, because the quality and security go hand in hand. I believe that open source gives you the opportunity to have to have secure code, intrinsically secure code, because of, as I mentioned, it's a community effort, and there's a community interest. To make for code to be vulnerable to attack, if you consider the case of proprietary closed code only being looked at by one organization, that organization's motivation may be to ship the end product rather than to make sure that the underlying infrastructure is secure and ready for use. So that, again, the community helps shine sunlight on the possibility of problems. Now, there are millions and millions and millions of lines of code in the open source projects, but the same in others as well. And so, you know, it would be rash of me to promise that we will never see any security compromise. But I think we've seen over the past few years where there have been issues raised, that they get raised quickly and they are addressed very quickly by companies such as ours and our peers in the industry to resolve these problems. And of course, again, the advantage when a problem does come up, it's not just one company that has to fix it. We have the entire community that can work together to rapidly respond to fix our cumulative customers' issues, rather than just relying on one vendor. Storage in particular, but software-defined infrastructure. Software-defined infrastructure is absolutely the next phase of infrastructure management. So in the past, you may create some level of compute or storage or networking for a particular application. And you allocated these resources and they became siloed. You know, you may only use 20% of the capacity or less. And then you had to set up another silo for a different project. And again, you only use 20% of capacity. And that becomes very wasteful. In turn, you also have the problem with when a project wants to access these resources, you have to set up a whole new server, you have to set up a whole new database, a whole new storage system, and this can take weeks or even months to get up and running. So this can be a big blocker when you're trying to be rapid in producing your projects. The whole idea of digital transformation is that you can do this rapid development, rapid change. Where software-defined infrastructure comes in is that it treats your basic resources, compute, networking, storage, as a pool that you then can allocate programmatically. It's infrastructure as code. So software-defined infrastructure lets you allocate and reallocate your underlying resources much more dynamically, even allowing projects and programmers and developers to allocate their own resources when they need them, as they need them. And with systems like software-defined storage, it actually changes the model of how you store your data from being part of a proprietary system with a very closed ecosystem of hardware and software, to being able to use commodity hardware and then still have enterprise class storage capabilities without having to have the price tag associated with proprietary hardware. So we see software-defined storage in particular as leading a change as dramatic in the storage industry as we saw Linux lead a change in the Unix industry that happened 10 years ago. So Suse has seen its portfolio expand from Linux. So we've been a Linux company for 26 years, more than 26 years now. So we're very well established in Linux, and that used to be the API that people would code to. They would code to the operating system. The operating system would provide those APIs. These days, our customers aren't targeting the operating system as the layer that they want to interact with. They want to interact higher up the stack. They want to be able to package their applications as containers, or even just push code into a platform that can run the system for them. So this is the software-defined infrastructure that we're talking about. It means that Suse has expanded our portfolio from the base level of the operating system up to the layer of the infrastructure as a service, where you virtualize the compute, VMs, you virtualize the storage using software-defined storage, virtualized networking using things like Open vSwitch. and then provide an infrastructure as a service layer, something like OpenStack on top of that, to allow the end users to be able to access those resources very easily. So we see our portfolio needs to expand because that's where our customers are moving to. Our customers want to be able to deploy containers. They want to be able to push code out to something like Cloud Foundry, which is a platform as a service system. And so that's the layer that we are now moving to meet our customers' demands. And typically they sell our open source. So,
yes.
so the major hardware vendors are all global alliance partners of ours. Similarly, the major public cloud vendors are also major alliances with ours. So we work with them and with suppliers such as Intel to make sure that as the new technologies come out, whether it's a new processor technology or a new server technology, that the capabilities that they are creating in their hardware are able to be exploited by the software. So
yes.
we ensure that the operating system, and this works in a way that, for example, Intel produces a lot of code for Linux, as does HPE, Lenovo, Cisco. All of the major vendors do this. They provide basic code into the Linux and OpenStack and other projects. What we do is we curate open source projects. So we make sure that those capabilities get brought into a product that customers can consume. They can take advantage of these open source innovations, but still be able to get enterprise level support. And that relationship that we have with the hardware vendors means that they can provide enterprise level support to their customers, both from their hardware and their software capability, but they themselves also have someone to collaborate with us when things get tricky on the operating system layer and the software defined infrastructure. So I think open source is applicable everywhere, in government, in finance, in healthcare, in industry, and these are all our customers already. So I don't think that there's any place where it's absolutely the case where it should be non-open source. Let me give you an example. In previous lives, I worked for, I should say, in previous jobs, I worked for companies that had fantastic technology, proprietary companies, but those companies got acquired, or they decided not to continue with a particular product line, and all of the customers that were relying on those products and those technologies had to find alternatives. There was no other vendor that they could move to take on that technology. There was no way for they themselves to take on that technology and continue. The business decisions made by the proprietary companies ended up impacting how the end users were able to operate their technology. With open source, that's no longer an issue. With open source, even if Suse was to disappear tomorrow, all of our project, all of our work is done in the upstream communities. So all our customers can continue to operate and continue to find someone else to help them operate their environments with open source perfectly available to them. So on that basis, I don't see any reason why any segment of the market or any particular industry or any particular type of technology should be closed. I just don't see any reason for it. We have a big R&D from our previous company, Novell and Microfocus. We have a big R&D facility based in Bangalore. And the great thing about Suse, the really interesting thing about Suse, is that we are a very distributed company. I'm based in Adelaide. My boss is based in Shanghai. The president of sales is based in the Netherlands. The president of strategy is based in Seattle. So we're a very distributed organization. Our engineering team is also distributed. We have a big group of people at our headquarters in Nuremberg in Germany. We also have a big center in Prague. And we have a center in Beijing. A lot of them do QA and so on. But other than those three big centers, most of our engineering team is based all over the world. What we do, Suse as a company, we look for people who are experts in the field and who have good standing in the open source community, and then we offer them a job. So long as you have access to internet, you can be employed by Suse. So we have increased our development workforce. Over the past 6 years, we've increased our development workforce by at least 300%. And there are currently at least 140 open positions. And most of those are development roles, and many of those are work from wherever you are roles. We've even had people who've moved countries because they can. So, for example, we have a developer who originally lived in Europe. He moved to Japan for a while because he wanted to live in Japan, and he could just take his job with him. It was worked. It's fine. I can tell you that I've been with Suse for 6 years now, and pretty much every year in those 6 years, Raj's team has doubled the amount of business that we've seen. It's been absolutely amazing and breathtaking to see, and there's plenty of opportunity left, I believe. So certainly, I'm sure Raj won't want to say this on camera, but he has a really good prospects ahead of him, and I would be surprised if we don't see another large increase in the amount of business that we're seeing, both in terms of general acceptance of open source, but also in the diversification of our portfolio as well.